Hey, are you all right?
Brenda Adams asked an old man shivering on a frozen park bench. Christmas Eve, Chicago, 18 below zero. She was homeless, no money, only a wool blanket sewn by her dying mother, the last thing she owned. His lips were pale, his body was failing.
You didn't have to do this.
Don't worry about me, you're freezing.
She wrapped her only blanket around him, spent her last $3 on coffee to warm his hands, then sat beside him.
It
Two
gets colder
strangers
at night, but we're
sharing
safe
stories
here.
of
Thank you
those
for
they'd
finding
lost.
me.
A soft laugh between the silence. A homeless black woman with nothing, giving everything to a man she doesn't know. She has no idea who he really is. But when morning came and Brenda unfolded that blanket, what fell out would rewrite every chapter of her life. But to understand what Brenda did that night, you first need to understand what life had taken from her. Brenda Adams, 46 years old, born and raised on the south side of Chicago. For 12 years, she worked as a line cook at a soul food restaurant called Honey's Kitchen. Small place, nothing fancy, checkered tablecloths, a bell above the door, and a kitchen so tight 2 people couldn't pass without turning sideways. But that little restaurant, it was everything. Brenda wasn't the head chef. She wasn't the owner. She was the woman behind the stove who made people close their eyes when they ate. Her smothered pork chops had a 2-hour wait on Sundays. Regulars didn't ask for a table. They asked if Brenda was cooking. She learned to cook from her mother, Grace. Not in a classroom, not from a book. In a tiny kitchen on Christmas morning, standing on a wooden stool, both hands covered in flour. Her mother would look down at her and smile. "I'm not teaching you recipes, baby. I'm teaching you how to love people through food." That stayed with Brenda her whole life. And she wasn't dreaming of wealth, never once. She dreamed of stability, of knowing the lights would stay on, of falling asleep without doing math in her head. A small apartment with herbs growing on the windowsill, a framed photo of her mother, a Bible with a cracked spine. Simple things, quiet things, the kind of things people don't notice until they're gone. Then one Monday morning, the owner of Honey's Kitchen gathered the staff in the dining room. The building had been sold to a developer. Restaurant was done. 14 employees. No severance, no warning. Just a locked door and a thank you for your service. 12 years. Gone in one sentence. Brenda didn't panic. Not at first. She picked up temp work, dishwashing at a hotel downtown, janitorial shifts at a warehouse, day labor gigs that paid cash and asked no questions. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Brenda had a knee injury. 12 years of standing on hard kitchen floors, 8 hours a day, had worn the cartilage down to almost nothing. She could cook all day. Muscle memory kept her going. But mopping floors, lifting crates, hauling trash bags at 4 in the morning? Her knee gave out within weeks. Just like that. No job, no savings left. 3 months behind on rent. And no one to call. Then came the morning she'll never forget. She stood on the sidewalk outside her apartment, holding 2 garbage bags of clothes, watching the building superintendent change the locks. The click of that deadbolt. She still hears it sometimes when she closes her eyes at night. Not loud, just final. That was 5 months ago. Since then, Brenda has slept at Shepherd's Gate Shelter when there's a bed, on the sidewalk when there isn't. But here's what you need to understand about Brenda Adams, and this is important. She didn't break. Every morning, she walks to the gas station on Halsted Street and washes her face in the restroom. She folds her clothes neatly inside her backpack. She says good morning to every single person who passes, even the ones who look straight through her, even the ones who cross the street when they see her coming. Her one true friend out here is Calvin Moore, 63 years old, a veteran, also homeless, sleeps 2 blocks over. They share food when they have it. They trade paperback novels back and forth. They watch out for each other, the way people do when the system has stopped watching out for them. And Brenda talks to God, out loud, casually, like he's sitting right beside her on the bench. Lord, I'm not asking for a mansion. I'm just asking for a floor. That's it. A floor and a stove. You give me those two things, I'll handle the rest. She believes kindness comes back around, not because she's seen proof, because her mother told her it does, and her mother never lied about the things that mattered. Now, the blanket. You need to know about the blanket. It's wool, thick, hand-stitched by her mother during the last winter of her life, when Grace's fingers were already stiff from arthritis. The edges are patched with mismatched yarn, purple, gold, cream, wherever the original thread ran out. It's not beautiful in any magazine sense, but when Brenda wraps it around herself at night, she swears she can still feel her mother's hands in every single stitch. It smells like old yarn and cold air now. But sometimes, if she presses her nose deep into the fold, she catches something faint underneath. Cinnamon. Her mother's kitchen on Christmas morning. That blanket is not just a blanket. It's the last piece of Grace Adams still alive in this world. The last proof she existed, that she loved, that she stayed up late stitching even when her hands wouldn't hold steady. And on Christmas Eve, the coldest night of the year, Brenda Adams is going to give it away to a complete stranger. But we're not there yet, because what you don't know is what was already happening across town, in a penthouse 42 floors above Lake Michigan, where a man who had everything was about to lose the one thing money could never fix. Christmas Eve arrived the way trouble always does for people like Brenda, without warning and without mercy. December 24th. Chicago was buried under a brutal cold snap. The weather report said tonight would drop to 18 below with wind chill. The kind of cold that turns breath into ice before it leaves your mouth. The kind of cold that makes the city go quiet, because everyone who has a door has already closed it. Brenda got to Shepherd's Gate Shelter at 3:30 in the afternoon, early. She knew the beds filled fast on nights like this. Dorothy Wilson met her at the door. Dorothy was the night shift supervisor. Tired eyes, steady voice, 11 years running that shelter. She knew every face. She knew Brenda's. And tonight, her face said everything before her mouth did. Brenda, I'm sorry. We're full. A pipe burst in the east wing, flooded 30 beds. We lost half the capacity. Brenda didn't flinch. She just nodded. The way you nod when you've heard bad news so many times, it doesn't even register as surprise anymore. Dorothy pressed a styrofoam cup of hot cocoa into her hands, then a pair of hand warmers. Come back at 6 in the morning. I'll hold a spot for you, I promise. Brenda took the cup, took the warmers, looked Dorothy in the eyes. Merry Christmas, Dorothy. No anger, no complaint, just Grace, the kind her mother named her after. She turned and walked back into the cold. The streets were emptying fast, storefronts dark, Christmas lights flickering on apartment windows she couldn't enter. She walked block after block looking for a safe spot, an overhang, a doorway deep enough to block the wind. She found one. The awning of a closed bakery, Sullivan's Bread Company. Metal security gate pulled down, brick walls on both sides. She could still smell it. Faint, trapped in the brick. Yeast, flour. The ghost of bread baked that morning. She laid her cardboard down on the concrete, pulled her backpack under her head, wrapped the wool blanket tight around her body. The wind still found the gaps. It always does. Calvin was across town tonight. He'd gotten one of the last beds at Shepherd's Gate. She was glad for him. But that meant tonight, for the first time in a long while, Brenda Adams was completely alone. She closed her eyes, tried to sleep. Then she heard footsteps, uneven, slow, the sound of someone who wasn't walking towards something, but away from everything. She opened her eyes. A man appeared at the far end of the block, white, maybe early 60s, silver hair, uncombed, matted against his forehead. He moved along the building wall with one hand dragging against the brick, like he needed it to stay upright. His coat was thin, far too thin, wrong for this weather. No hat, no scarf, no gloves. But his shoes. Brenda noticed his shoes. Dark leather, stitched soles. The kind of shoes she used to see on the businessmen who walked past Honey's kitchen without looking in. Those shoes didn't belong on this sidewalk. Not tonight. Not ever. He reached the bench across from her alcove. He didn't sit so much as fold. His body just gave in, knees buckling, hands gripping the armrest, lowering himself like a man twice his age. His eyes were open but unfocused, red-rimmed, wet, not from the cold, from something deeper. His breath smelled like whiskey, even from 6 feet away. Brenda watched him. He wasn't shaking the violent way. He was shaking the quiet way. The slow, steady tremor of someone whose body was losing warmth it couldn't make back. He sat there, staring at nothing. One hand in his coat pocket, the other hanging limp at his side. She could see his fingernails, clean, trimmed, manicured. Hands that had never held a cardboard sign or dug through a dumpster for dinner. This man had not been on the streets before. Everything about him said that. The way he sat, stiff, uncertain, like the bench was something foreign. The way his eyes kept drifting, not scanning for danger the way homeless people learn to, but just empty. He looked like a man who had stopped caring what happened to him next. And Brenda knew that look. She'd seen it in her own mirror 5 months ago, the morning the superintendent changed her locks. She'd worn that look for 3 days straight before she decided she wasn't done yet. But this man, sitting on that bench, alone on Christmas Eve, with nothing between him and the cold, he hadn't made that decision yet. And that's when Brenda Adams did the math that no one should ever have to do. She looked at the stranger, she looked at her blanket, and she already knew what she was going to do. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was who was sitting on that bench. What happened next took less than 90 seconds, but it would set off a chain of events that neither of them could have predicted. Brenda pulled the blanket tighter, felt the yarn between her fingers, each stitch her mother's hands. She brought it to her face for a second, just a second, breathed in. Cinnamon, faint, almost gone, but still there. She looked at the man on the bench. His head was tilting forward, his hands limp. The shaking had slowed, which was worse. She looked down at the blanket, then back at him, then at the blanket again. Every part of her knew what giving it away meant. No protection, no warmth, nothing between her and the wind until morning, and morning was 8 hours away. Her mother's voice, clear as a bell. Cold is cold, baby. It don't check your skin color or your bank account. Brenda closed her eyes, exhaled. Then she stood up. Her knees cracked against the cold. The stiffness ran through every joint in her body. She crossed the sidewalk. 8 steps, she counted them without meaning to, and sat down right beside him on the bench. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, shoulder to shoulder with a stranger. Then she unfolded the blanket, slowly, carefully, the way you handle something truly sacred, and draped it across his shoulders. She tucked the edges under his arms, pulled it tight around his chest. He looked at her, his eyes focused for the first time. You don't have to do this. Don't worry about me. You're freezing. But this is yours. What I need is for you to stop talking and keep that blanket on. He stared at her, a long, quiet moment. Then he pulled the blanket closer and whispered something she almost didn't catch. Thank you. Brenda nodded. Then she stood up again. Stay right here. Don't move. She jogged 2 blocks to the gas station on Halsted. Her knee screamed with every step. She bought a large black coffee with her last $3.12. That money was supposed to be tomorrow's breakfast. She brought it back. His hands were shaking too hard to grip it, so she wrapped his fingers around the cup and held them there until he could manage. Small sips. Let it warm you from the inside. He drank, slowly. She watched the steam rise past his face. After a few minutes, the tremor in his hands began to ease. Not gone, but quieter. She sat back down beside him, and the talking started. Not big talk, just the kind of conversation that happens between 2 people sitting in the cold with nothing to do but keep each other company. Brenda started. She told him about Honey's kitchen, the smothered pork chops, the Sunday rush, the time she knocked an entire bottle of cayenne into the collard greens and the whole restaurant cleared out coughing. He laughed, quiet, broken at the edges, but real. Then the conversation turned, the way it does on Christmas Eve when the streets are empty and the world feels smaller than usual. You got family? Brenda asked. He shook his head, slow. Not anymore. Silence. The wind filled it. Brenda looked up at the sky, a few snowflakes beginning to fall. My mama used to wake up at 4 in the morning every Christmas, she said. Before the sun, before anyone. She'd be in that kitchen with the oven going and butter melting in the pan. By the time I opened my eyes, the whole house smelled like heaven. Cinnamon rolls, apple cobbler, pork roast with garlic and rosemary. She smiled, the kind of smile that hurts. I used to sit on a stool next to her and help knead the dough. My hands were so small. She used to laugh and say I was making the bread angry. She paused. That's how I fell in love with cooking. Not from a school, from that stool, from her. The man was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. My wife used to make hot chocolate every Christmas Eve, from scratch, her grandmother's recipe, cayenne and a pinch of salt. He almost smiled. She burned it every single year. Every year. And every year I told her it was the best I'd ever had. Brenda looked at him. Was it? No, he laughed softly. It was terrible. But it was hers, and that made it perfect. The laugh faded. His eyes went somewhere far away. The last Christmas before she got sick, she made it one more time. We sat by the window, watched the snow come down. She leaned against my shoulder, and I put my arm around her. We didn't say a single word. We didn't need to. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what happiness feels like. He paused. I didn't know that was the last time. His voice cracked. He didn't try to fix it. Her name was Laura, and I miss her every single day. But tonight, Christmas Eve, sitting out here alone, tonight I miss her so much I couldn't stay inside those walls anymore. The silence in that house was louder than anything out here. She didn't say anything. She didn't try to comfort him with words that would feel too small. She just nodded, because she understood. The same kind of missing, the kind that doesn't fade, just changes shape. My mama's name was Grace, Brenda said quietly. She's been gone 4 years, but every Christmas I still hear her in the kitchen, still smell the cinnamon. She paused. People leave, but the love they cooked into the food, that stays. He looked at her, really looked at her. His eyes were wet again, but different now, not empty, full. If you could have one thing, he said, one thing in the world, what would it be? Brenda didn't even think about it. A restaurant. My own place. Doesn't have to be big, just a kitchen, a few tables, and a door that's open to anybody who's hungry. She looked down at her hands. That was my mama's dream before it was mine. She never got it. I thought I was getting close with Honey's kitchen. Then it was gone. She shook her head slowly. But a dream without a floor under your feet is just a dream. He went quiet. But something shifted behind his eyes, like a door opening slowly in a room that had been locked for a long time. The snow was falling heavier now. Brenda looked up. "Merry Christmas," she said softly. He looked at her. For the first time in 2 years, those words didn't sting. "Merry Christmas, Brenda." They sat there in the falling snow, two strangers, two kinds of broken, sharing warmth that had nothing to do with blankets or coffee. Somewhere down the block, headlights appeared. A black SUV rolled slowly past the bakery awning. It paused at the corner, engine idling, lights bright, then pulled away into the dark. Neither of them noticed. But someone inside that vehicle was looking for the man on the bench. The man tried to repay her 3 times that night. 3 times, Brenda Adams said no. They had been sitting together for over an hour. The coffee was gone. The shaking had mostly stopped. He was sitting straighter now. His eyes were clearer. Still sad, still heavy with something Brenda couldn't name, but present, awake. More himself than the man who had collapsed onto that bench. He looked around, at the cardboard on the ground, at Brenda's backpack tucked beneath the awning, at the spot where she had been lying before she crossed the sidewalk to help him. And he understood. "You were sleeping here tonight," he said, not a question. "Still am," Brenda said. "You're out here, in this cold, and you gave me the only thing keeping you warm." Brenda shrugged. "Latanti latanchung," that's what my mama would say. Cold doesn't pick favorites. He reached into his coat, the inner pocket, and pulled out a money clip. It was thick. He peeled off several $100 bills and held them out toward her. "Please, take this." Brenda looked at the money, then at him. "Where'd you get that kind of cash?" "It's mine. Please." She shook her head. "I didn't sit down next to you for money. I sat down because you looked like you needed somebody to sit down." She glanced at the bills. "Put that away before someone else on this block sees it and decides to help you differently." He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Put the money back. That was the first time. A few minutes later, he tried again. "Let me get you a hotel room, just for tonight. You shouldn't be out here. Not in this." Brenda looked straight ahead. "If I sleep in a hotel tonight, I'm still on this sidewalk tomorrow. A warm night doesn't fix a cold life." That answer hit him somewhere deep. She could see it, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes dropped to the ground. He nodded slowly, like a man hearing something true that he hadn't been ready for. That was the second time. The third time was quieter. "Then tell me," he said. "What can I do? There has to be something." Brenda turned and looked him in the eyes. "Go home. Sleep in your bed. Wake up tomorrow morning and have yourself a real Christmas." She paused. "That's how you thank me." He held her gaze for a long time, and something in his face changed. Not pity, not guilt. Respect. The deep, quiet kind. The kind you can't fake and can't buy. You're a remarkable woman, Brenda Adams. I'm a tired woman. Go home. He smiled. A small, real smile. Then he reached into his coat pocket, looking for his phone. He pulled it out, screen black, battery dead. As he did, a small card slipped from the pocket and fluttered to the ground between them. Brenda picked it up. A business card. Thick paper, raised lettering. She slipped it into her backpack without reading it. She'd return it later, or throw it away. He didn't notice it had fallen. He stood up, steadier now. He looked at her one last time, squeezed her hand once, firm, warm, and said, "Merry Christmas, Brenda. I won't forget tonight." Then he walked into the dark. Brenda watched him go. She pulled the blanket back around herself, he had left it folded on the bench, and lay down on her cardboard. The cold hit fresh. She curled tight. 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled quietly to the curb, the same one from before. The rear door opened and a driver in a dark uniform stepped out. He walked to the bench, looked at Brenda, then placed something small and heavy on the folded edge of her blanket. She was already half asleep by then. She didn't see what it was. But in the morning, when she unfolded that blanket, she would find a watch. And that single watch would change everything. By Christmas morning, 3 things had happened that Brenda couldn't explain. The first was the watch. She woke at dawn, stiff and frozen. When she sat up and shook the blanket loose, something tumbled into her lap. Small, heavy, cold metal. A watch. Silver case, leather strap. A name engraved on the back she didn't recognize. Patek Philippe. She turned it over in her hands. It was beautiful in a way she wasn't used to holding. She tucked it into her backpack and walked to Shepherd's Gate. Calvin Moore was waiting outside with 2 cups of coffee from the church next door. She showed him the watch. He went still. "Brenda," his voice dropped. "This is a Patek Philippe. That's what it says on the back. Do you know what these cost?" "No." "More than a house. Some of them, more than 2. Brenda stared at him, then at the watch, then back at him. "He must have left it by accident. It probably fell off his wrist." Calvin shook his head. "Watches like this don't fall off. They're built to stay on." The second thing was the business card. Brenda pulled it from her backpack. She hadn't looked at it the night before. Now she read it. Gregory Thornton, Chairman and CEO, Thornton Capital Partners. The name meant nothing to her, but Calvin's eyebrows went up. "Hold on." He went inside the shelter and came back 5 minutes later with a crumpled newspaper from the common room. 3 weeks old. Business section. Front page. A photograph of a silver-haired man in a dark suit cutting a ribbon in front of a new building. The headline read, "Thornton Capital closes. $500 million mixed-use development deal on South Side." Brenda looked at the photo. Same hair, same jawline, same eyes. Except in the photo they were sharp, confident. Nothing like the hollow stare she'd seen on that bench. "That's him," she whispered. "That's the man from last night." Calvin sat down slowly. "Brenda, you gave your blanket to a billionaire." The third thing came an hour later. Dorothy Wilson pulled Brenda aside in the hallway. "Someone called the shelter this morning, asked about you by name, wanted to know how long you'd been coming here, what your background was." "Who was it?" "Wouldn't say, but the number came from a downtown office line." Brenda felt something tighten in her chest. Not fear exactly, something closer to a question she couldn't yet form. She looked at the watch in her hand, at the business card. "I need to return this," she said quietly. "It's not mine to keep." But what was waiting for her at that office, Brenda had no way of knowing. On December 28th, Brenda Adams walked into a building she had no business being in, And what she found inside changed the meaning of everything that happened on Christmas Eve. She almost didn't go. For 3 days she sat with it, the watch, the business card, the phone call Dorothy told her about. Calvin said she was crazy. You don't walk into a billionaire's office and hand him a watch, Brenda. That's not how the world works. Then how does it work, Calvin? He didn't have an answer for that. On the morning of the 28th, Brenda got ready. She borrowed a clean sweater from the shelter's donation bin. Pastor Elaine Crawford at the church down the street loaned her a winter coat. Navy blue, wool, slightly too big in the shoulders, but warm. Calvin walked her to the bus stop on Halsted and waited until she boarded. "You sure about this?" he asked through the closing doors. "No," she said, "but it's not my watch." She rode the number 6 bus north, watched through the window as the neighborhood changed, crumbling storefronts giving way to polished glass, graffiti walls turning into marble lobbies. The distance between the South Side and Michigan Avenue wasn't just miles, it was a different country. She got off at her stop and stood on the sidewalk. Thornton Capital Partners, 20 stories of steel and glass, brass letters above the entrance, a revolving door that looked like it cost more than a year of her old rent. A doorman in a long black coat standing at attention. Brenda stared up at it. Every window in this building costs more than everything I own. She walked in anyway. The lobby was cold in a different way than the street. The kind of cold that comes from too much space and too much silence. Her sneakers squeaked on the marble floor. She felt every pair of eyes in the room turn toward her, and then politely away. The receptionist looked up, scanned Brenda from head to toe. The pause was brief, half a second, but Brenda felt every millisecond of it. She straightened her spine. "I have an appointment. My name is Brenda Adams." The receptionist checked a screen. Something in her expression shifted, softened. "Ms. Adams, yes, you're expected. Top floor. Mr. Thornton's personal office." She gestured to the right. "Elevator at the end of the hall." Brenda walked to the elevator, pressed the button, stepped inside. 18 floors of silence. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished steel doors. Borrowed coat, shelter sweater, backpack over one shoulder. She barely recognized herself in this context. The doors opened. The office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Bookshelves lining one wall. Architectural models of buildings on glass shelves. Awards and photographs everywhere. Galas, ribbon cuttings, handshakes with people whose faces Brenda had seen on television. And behind the desk, Gregory Thornton. Clean-shaven, tailored navy suit, silver hair combed back. He looked like a different species from the man on the bench. The transformation was total. Except the eyes. Same eyes. That part hadn't changed. He stood when she entered. "Brenda, thank you for coming." She sat down across from him, said nothing. Reached into her backpack, pulled out the watch, set it on the desk between them. "You left this behind." Gregory looked at the watch, then at her. A long silence. "I didn't leave it behind. I left it for you." His voice was steady but quiet. "That night I had nothing else to give you that came close to what you gave me." Brenda shook her head. "It's a watch. What I gave you was a blanket. We're not in the same category." "You're right, we're not. The blanket was worth more." He leaned back in his chair, took a breath, and then he told her everything. He told her about Laura, how she died 2 years ago, how the grief didn't hit him all at once. It crept in slowly, the way water fills a basement. First the drinking, then the silence, then the distance from everyone who tried to reach him. He told her about Christmas Eve, how he sat alone in his penthouse, staring at a photograph of Laura, drinking whiskey until the walls felt like they were closing in. How he put on a coat, the wrong coat, too thin, and walked out the front door with no plan and no destination, just away, away from the quiet. His phone died. He wandered south for hours, kept walking. The cold didn't register because nothing registered anymore. By the time he reached that bench, he didn't know what street he was on. Didn't care. I wasn't pretending to be someone else, he said. I wasn't testing anyone. I was a man who had given up on the night, and you sat down next to me. He paused. You told me about your mother, about Christmas mornings in her kitchen, about the stool you stood on when you were small. He looked at her. And you told me your dream, a restaurant with a kitchen, a few tables, and a door open to anyone who was hungry. His voice dropped lower. You said, a dream without a floor under your feet is just a dream. I've been thinking about that sentence for 3 days. He leaned forward. My wife, Laura, always told me I used my money wrong. She said I built towers for people who already had rooftops and ignored the ones sleeping under them. He stopped, swallowed. That night on the bench was the first time in 2 years I heard her voice clearly, because of you. Brenda sat still. She didn't speak. She didn't know what was coming next. But what Gregory Thornton said next, she could never have been prepared for. Gregory Thornton didn't invite Brenda Adams to his office just to say thank you. He had a proposition, and it was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. He reached into the drawer behind his desk and pulled out a leather folder. Thick. He slid it across the desk toward her. Open it. Brenda opened it. Inside, blueprints, floor plans, a full-color rendering of a storefront with a blank sign above the door, commercial kitchen layout, dining room seating for 40. I'm developing a mixed-use building on the south side, Gregory said. Residential units above, commercial space on the ground floor. One of those spaces was designated for a restaurant. He pointed to the rendering. I want you to open a restaurant in that space, Brenda. Your restaurant, your menu, your name on the door. She stared at the blueprints. Her fingers hovered over the floor plan but didn't touch it, like she was afraid it would disappear if she did. The build-out is fully covered. Commercial kitchen, dining room, signage, $350,000. Rent-free for the first 3 years. $50,000 in operating capital to get you started. And the business is yours, 100% ownership. My name doesn't appear anywhere. He pushed the folder closer. You pick the name. The room went silent. Brenda looked at the rendering, at the blank sign, at the kitchen layout that was bigger and more beautiful than anything she had ever worked in. Then she closed the folder. She slid it back across the desk. Gregory blinked. Mr. Thornton. Her voice was steady, clear, not angry, not ungrateful, just certain. I appreciate this. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But I can't accept it. Why not? She looked him straight in the eyes. Because I didn't sit down on that bench to get something. I sat down because you were cold and I had a blanket. That's it. If I take this, if I walk out with a restaurant I didn't earn, then every time I stand behind that stove, I'll ask myself the same question. Did I get here because I'm good enough, or because someone felt sorry for me? She shook her head. My mama taught me, what you build with your own hands, nobody can take away. Gregory sat back. He didn't look disappointed. He didn't look offended. He looked at her the way you look at someone who just confirmed everything you already suspected about them. Respect. deeper than before. The office was quiet for a long time. Then Gregory nodded. "All right," he said. "You don't want a gift. I understand that. I respect it." He paused. "But let me ask you something different. If I don't give you a restaurant, but I give you a chance to earn one yourself, would you take that?" Brenda didn't answer right away. She studied his face, looking for the catch. She didn't find one. "What do you mean?" Gregory leaned forward. "Thornton Capital runs this building. 12 floors of office space, 400 employees. Right now, we outsource the staff cafeteria to a catering company. The food is terrible. Nobody eats there. I've been looking for someone to take it over, run the kitchen, redesign the menu, make it a place people actually want to eat." He looked at her. "I'm offering you that job. Head chef of the company cafeteria, full salary, benefits, health insurance, a real contract." Brenda listened, didn't speak yet. "Second, we have an employee housing program. Affordable apartments in a building we invested in on the west side. The rent is deducted from your paycheck, well below market rate. It's not free, you pay like everyone else, but it's stable." He held up a third finger. "Third, the restaurant space on the south side. I'll hold it for 18 months. If in that time you save enough, build a business plan, and secure your own financing, you can apply to lease that space. Preferred rate for local businesses. But you sign the lease yourself. You fund the rest yourself. Your name, your money, your risk." He sat back. "I'm not giving you a restaurant, Brenda. I'm giving you a floor under your feet. The rest, you build yourself." Brenda stared at him. For the first time since she walked into this office, her eyes were wet. Not because of the money, not because of the job, because he heard her. He didn't push. He didn't insist. He didn't try to be her savior. He found a way to help that let her keep the one thing she had never lost. Not when the restaurant closed, not when she was evicted, not when she slept on frozen cardboard in 18 below weather. Her dignity. The only thing no one had managed to take. "That," she said quietly, "that I can accept." Gregory nodded. No celebration, no dramatic handshake. Just a nod between two people who understood each other. Then Brenda asked, "The cafeteria, when do I start?" "January 2nd. That's 5 days from now. Is that a problem?" Brenda almost laughed. "Mr. Thornton, I've been waiting 5 months for someone to hand me an apron. 5 days is nothing." He smiled. The first full smile she had seen from him. Not the broken half smile from the bench. A real one. "One more thing," she said. She looked at the watch still sitting on the desk between them. "Take your watch back." Gregory picked it up, looked at it, then looked at her. "Laura gave me this watch," he said, "on our 10th anniversary. I want you to know, leaving it with you that night was the most meaningful thing I've done with it since she died." He placed it back in his pocket, and for a moment, neither of them said anything at all. 18 months. That's all the time Brenda Adams needed to go from a sidewalk to a kitchen of her own. But not one of those days was easy. She started at the Thornton Capital cafeteria on January 2nd. First morning, standing in a commercial kitchen for the first time in over a year. Her hands shook. Not from cold, from something closer to disbelief. She gripped the handle of a chef's knife and held it until her fingers remembered what they already knew. The first week she kept it simple. Soups, sandwiches, salads. Safe. The second week she made smothered pork chops. By lunchtime the line stretched out the cafeteria door, down the hallway, past the elevators. Employees from other floors started showing up. Then employees from other companies in the building. People she had never met were asking the same question. "Is Miss Adams cooking today?" She moved into the studio apartment on the west side. 4th floor. Small. No view. But it had a floor, a stove, a door that locked. The first night, she sat on that floor and cried. Not from sadness, from the simple shock of having walls around her again, a ceiling above her, silence that belonged to her and no one else. By month 3, she had a routine: cook during the day, study at night. She enrolled in a small business management course at community college, evenings, twice a week, basic accounting, inventory management, how to write a business plan. She sat in the back row with a notebook and a pencil and wrote down every word. She started saving. Not much, but steady. Every paycheck a small amount set aside in a notebook she kept in her nightstand drawer. On the cover, in her own handwriting, Grace's Table Fund. Calvin Moore was next. Brenda recommended him for a prep cook position in the cafeteria. He got it. For the first time in years, Calvin had a paycheck, an address, and a reason to set an alarm. By month 8, the cafeteria had become the most popular spot in the building. Gregory noticed. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The proof was in the line at lunchtime. Month 9. Brenda sat at her kitchen table and started writing. 20 pages, her business plan, menu, projected costs, staffing model, revenue estimates. She wrote it herself, every number, every paragraph, every calculation. She took it to a bank. They turned her down. She revised it, tightened the numbers, took it to another bank. With 12 months of steady income and a plan that left no question unanswered, they approved a $30,000 small business loan. She signed the loan papers with a hand that did not shake. Month 12. She applied to lease the ground floor restaurant space in Gregory's Southside development, the same space he'd once offered her for free. This time, she walked in as a tenant. She signed the lease in her own name. Preferred rate for local businesses. Her money, her signature, her risk. The next 6 months, she built it. Not as sleek as Gregory's blueprints, but every table she picked herself. Every pan she bought herself. Every tile she chose because she liked the color. Opening night, a Saturday in late spring. Pastor Elaine Crawford said a blessing before the first plate left the kitchen. Calvin Moore stood at the prep station in a clean apron. Dorothy Wilson, who had left Shepherd's Gate to manage the front of house, greeted the first guests at the door. The sign above the entrance was hand-painted, gold and green letters on a dark background. Grace's Table. Below it, in smaller script, No one eats alone. Brenda cooked the first plate herself. Smothered pork chops. She set it at the window table, beside a framed photograph of her mother. That plate stayed on that table every night. An empty chair. Always set. Always honored. Within 6 months, brunch had a 90-minute wait. The local news ran the story. From the sidewalk to the stove. Brenda started a culinary apprenticeship program for homeless adults. 8 graduated the first year. Every Tuesday became Grace Tuesday. Anyone could walk in and eat for free. No questions, no sign-up sheet. Same tables, same food, same dignity. Gregory Thornton, quietly and without announcement, funded the expansion of Shepherd's Gate Shelter. 30 new beds, a new kitchen, a new wing named after the woman whose voice he finally heard again on a frozen bench. The Laura Thornton wing. 1 year after that Christmas Eve, Brenda Adams did something she didn't have to do. Again. December 24th. The dinner service at Grace's table had ended. The kitchen was still warm, the air thick with garlic and butter and the last traces of peach cobbler. The staff was cleaning up, laughing, trading leftovers. Brenda was in the back, packing 200 meals. Foil containers, sealed tight. Smothered pork chops, collard greens, cornbread. Each one wrapped in a donated blanket with a hand warmer tucked inside. They called it blanket night. Calvin Moore loaded the boxes into the back of the van. Dorothy Wilson organized the route. Pastor Elaine Crawford rode in the passenger seat with a thermos of hot cocoa and a list of street corners. They drove to the south side. The same blocks, the same doorways, the same benches. Brenda handed out every meal herself. She crouched down, looked people in the eye, and said the same thing to each one. "Merry Christmas. You're not alone tonight." Some cried, some just nodded. One woman held her hand and wouldn't let go for a full minute. Brenda let her hold on as long as she needed. At the end of the route, she asked Calvin to stop the van. She walked to the bench, the same one outside the bakery awning where she had slept a year ago, where a stranger collapsed and she gave away everything she had. It was empty tonight. She sat down on the cold metal, looked up at the sky, snowflakes drifting slow and silent through the dark. She remembered everything: the shaking hands, the whiskey breath, his voice saying Laura's name, the weight of the blanket leaving her arms. She stayed for 2 minutes, then stood up and walked back to the van. That night, in her apartment above the restaurant, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen that finally smelled like home, she opened her closet. On the top shelf, folded neatly, was the wool blanket her mother had stitched by hand, patched with purple and gold and cream yarn, frayed at the edges, old beyond its years. She lifted it down, pressed it to her face, breathed in. It didn't smell like the street anymore, not like cardboard or cold air. It smelled like flour, like cayenne, like the kitchen at Grace's table. She draped it across the foot of her bed. Beside it, on the nightstand, a framed pay stub, her first from Thornton Capital. Beneath it, in her handwriting, "The day I stood on my own feet again." She turned off the light, and for the first time in a very long time, Christmas Eve felt exactly the way it should. Brenda Adams didn't help a stranger because she knew who he was. She helped him because she didn't, because it was Christmas Eve, because he was cold and she had a blanket. No calculations, no expectations, just a woman who decided that someone else's suffering mattered more than her own comfort tonight. And when that stranger turned out to be a billionaire, when he offered her everything, she pushed it back across the desk. "I'll earn it myself." And she did. Every dollar, every table, every plate that came out of Grace's table, built with her own 2 hands. If this story reminded you that quiet kindness still exists, even where prejudice says it shouldn't, then like this video. Share it with someone who needs it tonight. Subscribe so we can keep telling stories like hers. The blanket you give away might just be the one that brings you home.
Here's what hit me hardest. She could have taken it, everything, free, handed to her on silver plate, and nobody would have blamed her. After everything she went through, after sleeping on the cardboard in the freezing cold, she had every right to say yes, but she didn't, because she knew something most people forget. A gift can be taken away, but what you build with your own hands, your own sweat, your own money, that's yours forever. Nobody can touch it. Nobody can say you didn't earn it. Nobody can take that right away from you. And that's the real strength, not just surviving, not just getting by. Building something from nothing and knowing deep in your bones that every single brick is yours. So, if someone offers you the easy way, think twice. And if you are the one who has nothing right now, don't lose hope. A floor and a chance, that's all you need. Give me a floor and a chance, and I will build the rest myself. That's the most powerful sentence a person can say. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice, every week. And remember, what you build with your own hands, nobody can take away. Nobody, ever.